Okay, so here I've dealt out 7 cards to each player. Okay, this will be a 2-player game, so we only have 2 player order cards. How do we use player order cards? Basically, you flip them over, and then each player just picks a card at random. So I'm player 1, and you are player 2, in terms of the order. Now, an important point to note, player orders are only reselected on odd-numbered rounds. So, in game round 1, you draw your player order. In game round 2, you do not. And in game round 3, you draw a new player order. And in game round 4, you do not. So that means that you'll always have a chance to attack another player rather than, you become player 2 and then immediately next round you become player 1. You basically have 2 turns back to back. That will happen sometimes, but not all the time. Okay, so we're now in game round 1, and I'm player 1 and you're player 2. You have 7 cards, and I have 7 cards. So as player 1, I'm going to open my cards out so you can see what I have. So I have 2 attack cards, 2 purple cards, 2 blue cards, and 1 defensive card. So, at the start of a round, I decide that I want to add 1 card. So I'm going to take 1 unit, I'm add it to my pile here in static mode. Then I've got 4 attacks. Now you'll notice that these 2 purple cards, they can only be used in mobile mode. So should I switch my units to mobile mode? Probably not, because I only have 1 gun card and it's a light gun, so it's not very useful here. Whereas I have a heavy missile, which I cannot fire if I'm in mobile mode. So I have 4 attacks. What I'm going to do is, first of all, I have an elite vehicle crew, so I'm going to make my tank even harder to kill. So now my tank has got 10 hit points instead of 8. It's very hard to kill. And on top of it, that doesn't cost any action points. So I've got 4 action points. I will use 1 action point to fire a heavy missile at this enemy tank. And I can't use my light guns at all, because my light guns can only fire and hit targets in the first row, and because the tanks have a -1, have armor, I can't actually penetrate the tank. So this is a totally wasted card for now. I'm not going to throw it away, I'm keeping it because I can still use it if I wipe out his tanks. So now I've got 3 more action points left. I'm going to use 1 action point to fire this artillery at him. I'm going to use another action point to fire this artillery at him. And then I'm going to use the last action point to put one of my units' defensive cards face down. Now, you'll note that it's a brown defensive card, which means I can only use it in mobile mode. It means I can still lay it down face down. You just don't know that it's ineffective. But if anyone actually fires at me, this card cannot help me because I'm not in mobile mode. But as long as it's covered, you don't know that it's actually what it says. So in a way, I can use a card to bluff, even though it's not effective. So I'm going to use this to bluff. But of course, this is an open card game for explanation, but in a real game, you might do this. And I cover this so you can't fire anything on my second row, or you think you can't. Okay? So now I've got 2 artillery attacks. I can declare on any units. I want to fire at this guy and this guy, because as I mentioned earlier, I want to try and remove his anti-air units, so that when I eventually get air attack cards, I have much better chances of wiping him out. So, unless he has a damage control card, this would damage his tank, and now I'll get to roll. And remember, it's a 1 or 2 to hit units which are static. So if I roll a 1 or 2, I destroy this guy. I'm successful, so I wipe out this guy, and he's discarded from the game. And again, a 1 or 2 against him. I failed, so I didn't manage to wipe out his anti-air unit, but I did manage to wipe out 1 infantry unit. And that concludes my turn. So now I have 3 cards. I can draw 4 more to bring my hand back up to 7. Now as you can see, my shuffling is awful, so now I've gotten a whole bunch of purple cards. But it's alright, and this is just to explain how the game works. Now, on to your turn. What are the cards that you have? So you have a blue card for reinforcements. You have 2 defensive cards. You have a purple card, and you have 3 attack cards. So, likewise, you have a reinforcement card, and you don't have any artillery units. So the unit on the top says RT, you 1, 1, 2, so you reinforce and you get yourself an artillery unit as well. So now you have 4 attacks left. What would you do? You can use all your attack cards. Now, as I mentioned, this light gun card is not useful for you because my front row is filled with tanks as well. So you might want to hold this on to later, or you might want to discard it and see if you pick up another better card. So let's say you discard this card. But you can fire 2 heavy missiles. Can you fire them for your combat team? Yes, you can. You have 1 here, 2, 3, 4. So you can fire up to 4. But remember, this unit is in the 4th row. So if you wanted to fire from this unit, you have to move it up to the 2nd row. But you don't need to right now because there's enough. This guy and this guy can fire. So you decide to fire 2 heavy missiles against this tank. Now remember, there's armor, so you don't actually do 8 points of damage to this tank and kill it. You actually only do -3, -3, 6 points of damage to this tank. However, you have purple cards. You have a purple card which is green, which means you can actually use this in your current mode, which is static. And this card says it gives an additional -3 damage of value for any gun or missile card fired by a unit in static mode. So since your unit is in static mode, you can use this card along with any of these cards, and this card now becomes -7. This is important because when this is -7, which means that when you apply the -1, the tank's armor to this, from -7 it becomes -6. It doesn't become -3 and -2, which gives you -5. You add this together first as -7, and then you reduce it by 1 because of the tank armor. So this from -7 becomes -6. But that's good because if I do -6 damage to a tank, and then another -3, I do -9 damage in total, and there's only 8 points for this tank. Which means if I use this combination of cards, this tank is destroyed. So now you have used up 1 attack, 2 attacks. You can use your artillery to call a 3rd attack. So you can use this artillery unit to, let's say, again, to attack. Maybe you're not so worried about my air defense, but you don't like my artillery. I keep attacking your artillery, so you want to use your artillery to take out mine. So you say, okay, I'm going to target him with this. Again, you roll 1 or 2 to hit a unit that is in static mode. So my unit's in static mode, you roll 1 or 2 to hit. You failed. So in this case, you missed and my unit survives. And now you've used up 3 action points, you've got 1 left. You decide that you will cover one of your defenses. Now in this case, just like me, you have a defensive card that can only be used in mobile mode because it's brown. But it's okay, you don't want to use it right now, you just hold it in your hand. But you'll use this card instead because it's black, which means you can use it in any mode, and it's very useful because it protects you against guns, missiles, air attacks, and artillery. So you decide that I want to protect my tanks because I've already got a damaged tank. So I'm going to use this here. on this first row and I put it face down, which cost me my last action point, but nobody knows what it is because it's covered. And so that's one round. And then you have one card left in your hand, so you pick up 6 extra cards and you carry on the game. Okay, so this is basically how the game works, and you just keep doing this. When you have an air attack, you just declare the air attack just like any other card. You call it on someone. If it's modified by air defense, you have to roll the correct number, and if it's successful, then you damage it just like any other unit. And we keep doing this back and forth until one player either loses all his combat team units, or we reach game round 8. At the end of game round 8, when both players or all the players have finished their turn, if no one has died, then the game ends and we count points in all the remaining units in everybody's combat team. The person with the highest number wins the game. Okay, so I hope that this is... I forgot one important point. You can actually change your tactical mode every turn. You have to do it at the start of your turn. So let's say in a particular turn you have a lot of heavy guns. You have 2 heavy guns which you really want to use against a unit in the 3rd row of your enemy. So you decide, I'm going to go mobile. So you go mobile, all your units have to go mobile, but for that round your guns can hit 1 row further. So all your heavy guns can hit all 3 rows. Your light guns, they still must fire from the front row, but they can hit the first 2 rows. And you can now use these against enemy units. Plus, you have a free gun attack. So the first gun card you use does not cost any action points. Now, this mode remains until your next turn. So you're now in mobile mode and people can attack you with a penalty, because now to attack an enemy in mobile mode, you can only hit him with a 1 if you use artillery, whereas if it's static, you can roll a 1 or 2. So at the end of this turn, when it's back to your turn, you can then switch them back to static mode for your next turn. So remember, at the start of the turn, you can choose which mode you want to be in. Your whole team has to change, and they remain in that mode all the way until your next turn. Now, another difference between static and mobile mode is if you're in static mode, you can reposition 3 units at the start of the turn, and you can only move them 1 row, either up or down. So if I wanted to fire my light missile, I can move this to the front row and I can fire the light missile, but that counts as 1 move. I have 2 more moves left. If I wanted to fire a heavy missile, it's in the 3rd row, I've got to move it to the 2nd row. So this is the 2nd move. And let's say I want to protect this, I don't want anyone to shoot at him with missiles or heavy guns, I will move him to the 3rd row. That's 3 moves. And I cannot move this from the back all the way to the front because this is 2 rows. You can only move 1 row at a time. Okay, that's in static mode. However, if you are in mobile mode, so you change to mobile mode for this turn, you can move any number of units, any number of rows. You can literally reshuffle your entire team if you want to, because the whole team is in a move. You can overtake each other and advance accordingly. But remember, whatever formation you change to in this round, it remains in this formation in mobile mode until your next turn. So you're vulnerable for 1 round until you come back to your turn, and then you can shift your units back again. So something to think about when you want to change between static and mobile modes. Okay, that's basically it. The action cards themselves are fairly self-explanatory from the cards themselves. There's also a detailed set of rules on the website, so if you want to read the rules and understand what I've just been explaining, just go to www.board-gaming.com/TAC. Tactical Armoured Combat, TAC, okay? Yes, and of course, feel free to email me or to post on Facebook if you have any questions, any feedback about this. This is just the first version of the game. I'm actually thinking of the second version, which has some expansion units in this. For example, more kinds of attack cards, more variety of units, and the most fun thing, helicopters. I'm going to bring helicopters in an expansion pack, which will make your air defense units even more important for protecting your combat team against enemy helicopters. But for now, we're just only using ground units. Hope you have fun. Let me know how it goes. I'm very happy to hear your comments and feedback. Do share this page with your friends too if you like the game. Thank you very much. Have fun.